She stood in the kitchen like she owned the whole damn house, her wine glass full, but untouched hair pulled back in that perfect way that made her look like someone out of a corporate magazine. Meanwhile, I was crouched in the garage again, a rat's nest of Ethernet cables at my feet, my fingers raw from the soldering iron fixing a signal drop issue for a beta client that didn't even know my name. That was my life. Quiet victories, no applause, no champagne, just the sound of servers humming and the faint echo of someone else's heels walking farther away from me every day. Amanda's degrees covered the living room wall like museum exhibits. Harvard, Wharton, some plaque from Forbes. I had a dusty shelf with an old router prototype and a sketchbook that still smelled like solder smoke and dreams. She used to say I had vision, but the kind of tone she used, like a mom praising a toddler's finger painting. It wasn't respect. It was dismissal with a smile. Her dad, Franklin, never bothered to hide his contempt. Every holiday dinner, he'd pat me on the shoulder like I was the family dog. Still working on that. Experiment, Jack, he'd ask, sipping scotch and glancing at Amanda like I was something she'd outgrow. I didn't correct him. Why explain value to a man committed to misunderstanding you? But I loved her. That's the part that still stings. I loved her with all the bruised parts of me that kept believing one day she'd turn around and actually see what I was building. I was the guy making sure her Zoom calls didn't crash during thunderstorm surges, fixing electrical flickers so her 6-monitor setup didn't fry the circuit. I brought her coffee at 2 a.m. before her Singapore calls kissed her on the forehead as she stressed over closing deals. I wasn't asking for applause. I just wanted to be seen. Then I heard it. Late one night, I was grabbing a box of cables from the hallway closet, and I caught her voice, low conspiratorial, a knife hidden in silk. He's supportive, but not ambitious, she said, laughing softly into her phone. He likes being invisible. It's easier for him. I didn't breathe. I just stood there in the dark, with plastic and wires in my hands, like I'd walked into a bad dream. Invisible. That word hit like a brick to the chest. She wasn't wrong, but hearing it said out loud like I was some accessory, she'd grown tired of wearing shattered something. Still, I didn't say a word. What would I even say? That I was trying. That Corsin had already cut delivery lag by 28% across 3 markets. That we'd survived 4 cyber attacks without downtime. That one of our modules had just been adopted in a state hospital network. No. I stayed silent. Because real love isn't loud, right? That's what I used to tell myself. Real love is staying up fixing bugs while she sleeps, making sure the Wi-Fi never fails, that her video never freezes, that she never has to see the man behind the screen. But something changed after that. The silence wasn't comfort anymore. It was suffocation. I started building a new structure that night. Not code, not updates. A plan, a damn escape route. I buried Corsin behind a network of shell companies set up new licensing names. I stopped signing my name on client deals. I became someone else on paper. And Amanda, she didn't even notice, or maybe she never looked. Then came the party. Stratman Capital Rooftop, Midtown Manhattan. Amanda's promotion party. Senior partner. Tech acquisition lead. There were golden lights, imported champagne, a string quartet trays of overpriced appetizers I couldn't pronounce. I showed up in the only suit I own, charcoal gray, slightly worn at the cuffs, and she didn't even introduce me. Not once. Not to the exec from Zurich. Not to the analyst from London. Not even to her intern. She passed me like I was a waiter with the wrong tray. I kept telling myself she's just networking. She's just busy. But then she took the mic. She thanked everyone. Her team. Her father. The firm. She even gave a shout out to their London office. And then she turned to me with that practiced smile, the kind you use for PR, not people, and said, and to my husband Jackson, thank you for showing me exactly what not to do in business. Laughter. Real, raw laughter. It rolled through the rooftop like thunder. I didn't flinch. I didn't walk out. I didn't even blink. I just set my glass down, quiet controlled, and I smiled. The kind of smile you wear when everything inside you is already gone. No one followed me. Not a single hand reached out as I disappeared into that glittering night. And that's when I knew it wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a brand, and I had just been dropped from the product line. But they had no idea what I'd already built in the shadows. The doorman barely looked up when I walked into our building that night, still dressed in the suit Amanda refused to acknowledge. The lights in the lobby felt too bright, too artificial, like they were trying too hard to make the place look alive. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. I needed the weight in my legs, the ache in my knees. I needed to feel the gravity that the people on that rooftop had long since forgotten. By the time I stepped into the apartment, the air was still. Not quiet still. Like even the walls were holding their breath. Her heels weren't by the door. Her purse wasn't on the counter. She was probably still at the party, basking in the afterglow of a toast built on my bones. I walked into the kitchen, didn't even bother turning the light on. The hum of the fridge filled the room like a low, steady heartbeat. I dropped my keys on the table, pulled out my laptop, and opened Corsin's dashboard. All systems green. No errors, no alerts, no complaints. Our clients were still up and running, still riding on the back of the thing she called a hobby. That's the thing about infrastructure. It doesn't need validation. It just has to hold. And I'd built it to hold under fire. But what Amanda never knew, what none of them knew, was that Corsin didn't belong to me anymore. Not legally. Not publicly. Months ago, I sold majority control to a trust quietly managed by Kira Miles, one of the sharpest IP attorneys in the business. The name on the paper's Sentinel Systems, a name no one could trace back to me unless they knew where to look. And no one ever looked behind the man who fixes Wi-Fi. That little company Amanda thought she could acquire with a PR stunt. She didn't even realize her firm was already leasing one of our encrypted security modules under a 5-year license signed by Sentinel. That meant if Stratman Capital even breathed the word integration, they'd be in breach of contract. Amanda thought she'd killed me in a room full of applause. But the autopsy report was premature. So I started writing. Not code. A plan. A press release about Sentinel's recent contract with the Department of Defense. A little announcement just enough to make any law firm with a soul hesitate. Then I scheduled a valuation update, one that would quietly show we'd crossed the $180 million mark. Then I drafted a cease and desist letter. Tight, surgical, devastating if used. I didn't send it. Yet. I just wanted to know it was there. Like a loaded chamber. Just in case. When Amanda walked through the door at dawn, she didn't even flinch. "You're up," she said, casually, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't offered me up as a punchline just hours earlier. She pulled a bottle of water from the fridge and leaned against the counter. "It was a good night," she added. "For everyone but the guy it was about," I said, without looking up. "Oh, come on. It was a joke. Lighten up." I turned. calm, controlled. You announced the acquisition of a company you don't own. Her smile stiffened. We filed the paperwork. You'll get paid. I don't need your buyout, I replied. Corsin isn't for sale. That's when she laughed. Not the charming kind. The dismissive kind. You're adorable, she said. You don't have a say anymore. You signed everything over. Remember, I smiled too. Not because it was funny, because I saw the crack. The moment before realization hits. You're right, I said. I don't own Corsin anymore. She blinked. Confused, cautious. It's under Sentinel Systems. And they're announcing a federal defense contract this morning. If your firm so much as uses the word acquisition in public again, you'll be flagged for violation of national security contracts. Her smile disappeared. You're bluffing. I picked up my laptop, walked past her slowly. You called me a dropout, a joke. You used me as the punchline to your big moment. But while you were celebrating your climb, I was building the mountain under your feet. I didn't wait for a reply. I just walked upstairs, closed the door, and finally let out a breath I hadn't known I'd been holding since the rooftop. That night, for the first time in a long time, the silence in the house wasn't loneliness. It was victory. Not loud, not showy. Just the kind that echoes deep and quiet, like the sound of power shifting. The glass doors hissed open at precisely 9:01 a.m., just like I knew they would. Amanda entered first, her red-bottom heels clicking across the marble like gunshots in a cathedral. Her charcoal gray deal dress hugged every edge with corporate precision. Behind her was Franklin Posture, perfect eyes cold, flanked by two men in tailored suits who wore litigation like cologne. I was already seated at the head of the table. No folder, no handshake, just my laptop open and waiting. Morning, Amanda said, sweetly, sliding a leather-bound folder across the polished wood. You're going to love this deal, Jackson. I promise. I didn't touch it. Franklin nodded at me, more like a dismissal than a greeting. You're lucky we're offering anything at all after that stunt of a press release. I leaned back in my chair and clicked the first key. The wall monitor came to life. Slide 1, Corsin's valuation, $180 million verified. Audited. Franklin's brow twitched. Slide 2, client logos. Fortune 100 companies. 2 in the U.S., 1 in Germany. Amanda's lips parted just slightly. Slide 3, Sentinel's defense contract, complete with government seal and reference ID. Enough to make any acquisition team's spine tighten. Then I turned the laptop toward them. One more tab opened to Strapman's internal infrastructure logs. Your firm, I said calmly, has been using Sentinel's encrypted packet acceleration module for 10 months. You licensed it through a third-party vendor. Franklin leaned forward. You're bluffing. I clicked a file in internal email from Strapman's own IT director confirming the integration. Amanda's smile faltered. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Even if that's true, you're still vulnerable under standard merger clauses. I'm not merging, I said flatly. But your division might be. Slide 4 loaded Sentinel's acquisition proposal, not for the whole firm, but for Strapman Capital's cybersecurity portfolio. Tightly worded, razor precise, and backed by 3 key patents your firm failed to renew last quarter. Amanda tried to speak. Her voice cracked before it formed. This doesn't have to be ugly, she finally said. We're partners. We can find a middle ground. I looked at her, my voice low. We could have before the rooftop stunt. She blinked hard, memory hitting like a slap. This isn't revenge, Amanda. This is correction. You made me the lesson. Now you're living it. Franklin stood abruptly, jaw tight. This is war. No, I replied, rising to my feet, voice steady. This is business. You're just not used to losing. He stormed out, One lawyer followed. The other stayed, watching me a second longer, weighing something in his eyes, maybe ethics, maybe survival, then walked out as well. Amanda was the last to move. She stood slowly, fingertips grazing the edge of the table like it was the last thing holding her up. "You played me," she whispered. I didn't flinch. "You ignored me. There's a difference." And then I showed her the final slide, a list of emails. Forwarded from someone inside Strapman. Messages between Amanda and Franklin mocking my intelligence, calling me the garage guy, the hobby husband. I didn't need to say anything else. Amanda stared at the screen, then down at the floor. For once she had no words, no spin, no script. The silver-haired executive at the far end of the table finally spoke. "We need to table this for internal review," she said. "But from where I'm sitting, this isn't a loss. It's a parachute." Amanda opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The room had moved on without her. I packed my laptop and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. Outside, the air felt heavier, like the tension had followed me into the hall. But I wasn't shaken. Inside that room, they'd tried to bury me under paperwork, humiliation, and applause. But I came back, with contracts, code, and consequences. And now, I had all three in my hands. The war room wasn't much to look at: exposed brick steel beams, no windows. But it was ours. It was real. The last place in the world Amanda would have thought an empire could be rebuilt. And yet when I walked in, Kira was already there, tablet glowing fingers flying across the screen. She didn't greet me. She never did during moments like this. She just looked up, eyes sharp. "They'll spin it as a strategic alliance," she said, "but we both know what it really is." I nodded. A hostile takeover, disguised as mercy. David Lynn arrived next, then June Brooks. They didn't waste time. David pulled up a live system feed. "We already control 3 of their cornerstone patents," he said. "Pulse Protect, Phantom, Echo Trace. With those, we can recreate 80% of their cybersecurity stack." June was flipping through a folder. "And if we acquire the rest of the division, we don't just match them, we bury them." That was the shift. The silence after exposure had turned into opportunity. Amanda and Stratman thought they'd contain the damage. They didn't realize we'd already prepped the next move: legal, technical, strategic. We weren't asking for revenge. We were scripting the rewrite. Kira laid out the plan: an asset-based acquisition masked under a licensing extension. No headlines, no lawsuits, just contracts filed quietly and perfectly executed. By noon, the documents were out. By 2:00 p.m., the reply came. It wasn't from Franklin. It wasn't even from Stratman's board. It was from Amanda. 3 lines, dry, corporate, final. "We acknowledge receipt of Sentinel's proposal. The board will accept the terms under the outlined structure. No apology, no explanation, just surrender." I stared at the screen, not with triumph, with clarity. This was the woman who once helped edit my first pitch deck, circling weak sentences with a highlighter in our apartment with a cardboard coffee table. This was the woman who once said, "You've got something here, you just need someone who knows how to package it." But somewhere along the way, she stopped helping me build and started planning how to replace me. I forwarded the email to Kira. She replied within 5 minutes. "Welcome to your empire." That night, the press release went live, but not the one they feared. This one was quieter. No logos, no victory laps. Just a subtle announcement that Sentinel Systems had finalized the acquisition of a security portfolio previously held by Stratman Capital. By the time news outlets started piecing it together, it was already done. Amanda didn't show up to the Monday debrief. Instead, she sent in a resignation letter. 3 lines. No excuses. Effective immediately. Kira denied her severance clause. Franklin asked to meet in private. I agreed, not out of ego, out of finality. We met in a corporate club downtown, one where years ago I wasn't even allowed past the lobby without Amanda signing me in. This time, the host greeted me by name. Mr. Cole. Right this way. Franklin was already seated, a glass of untouched scotch at his side. He looked smaller, not in body, in presence. The man who once called me the Wi-Fi guy now couldn't look me in the eye. You embarrassed us, he said finally. No, I said, sitting down. You embarrassed yourselves. I just stopped covering for it. He nodded slowly. Vivian was wrong. About the toast. About you. I didn't see it at the time, but stop, I cut in. Don't rewrite history now. You saw it. You clinked your glass. He didn't argue. She's leaving New York, he added. Her brother offered her a position in Chicago, real estate tech. Something softer. I said nothing. She'll be fine, he said. I'm sure she will, I replied. She always lands on her feet. Then he leaned forward. I came here to ask you something. Not as a businessman, as a father. Don't release the emails. I studied him. The same man who once laughed when I brought Amanda flowers for her first client pitch. The same man who made jokes about my little hobby at Thanksgiving. And now he wanted mercy. They're already archived, I said. Not released. His eyes flicked up. Why? Because I've already won, I said softly. And I don't need to burn the house down. I just needed to stop living in its basement. He leaned back, defeated. But finally, for the first time in years, I saw it. Respect. Not warmth, not apology, just respect. And that was